Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are diving deep into the complete story of the Washington quarter dollar, a coin that may look ordinary at first glance but actually carries nearly a century of American history, economic change, artistic debate, and hidden collector value within its small circular form, because the Washington quarter is not just spare change. It is a living historical document that has passed through the hands of millions of people across generations, and its story begins during a time of national reflection and hardship, when the United States was searching for symbols of unity and strength, leading to the decision to honor George Washington, the nation's first president, on a circulating coin, something that had previously been avoided due to early American resistance to placing real people on money, and this decision alone marked a turning point in U.S. coinage philosophy, because Washington was seen not as a political figure but as a unifying national symbol whose image could transcend party lines and regional differences. And the quarter dollar was chosen as the denomination to carry this honor largely because of its widespread everyday use, ensuring that Washington's likeness would be seen daily by citizens from all walks of life. And when the coin was first introduced in 1932, it was originally intended as a one-year commemorative issue marking the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth, but the design was so well received and the symbolism so powerful that it ultimately replaced the standing Liberty quarter permanently, beginning one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. And the obverse portrait, created by sculptor John Flanagan, was based on a classical bust of Washington by Jean-Antoine Houdon, chosen specifically because it was considered the most accurate likeness of Washington made during his lifetime, lending authenticity and historical respect to the design, while the reverse featured a proud, heraldic eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength, readiness, and peace, surrounded by olive branches that reinforced America's desire for stability. And these design elements were struck by the United States Mint using 90% silver and 10% copper, a composition that gave the coin intrinsic value and a solid, satisfying weight that many collectors and historians still admire today. And during the early years of production, Washington quarters were minted at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint leaving its own subtle fingerprint on the coins through differences in strike quality, die preparation, and overall appearance, factors that would later become critical to collectors evaluating rarity and value. And as the Great Depression gripped the nation, these quarters circulated heavily, often being used and reused until the designs wore down, which is why early examples in high condition are far rarer than their original mintage numbers suggest. And as America moved through World War II, the Washington quarter continued to play its role in everyday commerce, jingling in the pockets of factory workers, soldiers on leave, and families rationing supplies, silently witnessing one of the most transformative periods in world history. And yet despite wartime pressures, the mint maintained silver composition, ensuring that the coin remained both a practical tool and a store of value. And after the war, as prosperity returned and the economy expanded, quarter production increased dramatically, pushing the Washington quarter into every corner of American life, from vending machines to toll booths. And this massive circulation is precisely why so many people today underestimate the coin's significance, failing to realize that beneath its common appearance lies a series rich with key dates, condition rarities, mint errors, and historical importance. And understanding this background is essential for any collector or enthusiast, because it explains why some Washington quarters are worth only face value while others sell for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars at auction, all depending on year, mint mark, condition, and strike quality. And as we move forward through the story of this iconic coin, we will uncover how changes in metal composition, minting technology, collector demand, and historical context transformed the Washington quarter from everyday change into one of the most widely collected and deeply studied coin series in American numismatics, proving that even the smallest coin can carry the weight of a nation's past and the promise of hidden value waiting to be discovered. As the Washington quarter dollar continued beyond its initial debut, its early production years quietly laid the foundation for everything collectors study and chase today, because while the coin was admired for its dignified design, few people at the time imagined that subtle differences in mint output, economic pressure, and circulation patterns would one day create major rarities, especially during the critical first decade from 1932 through the early 1940s, when the nation was still recovering from the Great Depression and every coin produced was expected to work hard in circulation, not sit untouched in collections. And this reality explains why early Washington quarters are so challenging to locate in high grades today, as most were immediately spent, handled repeatedly, and exposed to wear long before anyone thought of saving them. And the situation was made even more complex by the uneven distribution of mintages between Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, because while Philadelphia produced large quantities without mint marks, the branch mints often struck far fewer coins, making their issues scarcer from the start, particularly in years when economic demand was low, and among all early dates, the 1932D and 1932S stand apart as the undisputed keys to the series, not because they are impossibly rare overall, but because they were produced in small numbers and then circulated relentlessly, leaving very few examples in attractive, original condition, and this combination of low mintage and heavy use created a perfect storm of scarcity that still defines their value today, and beyond those famous keys, many other early dates from the 1930s and 1940s reveal hidden scarcity when examined through the lens of condition rarity, as coins from this era were often weakly struck, particularly on the reverse where the eagle's feathers frequently lack sharp detail, a result of worn dies and the pressure to maintain high output during challenging economic times. And this is where advanced collectors learn that grading Washington quarters is as much about strike quality as surface preservation, because a technically uncirculated coin can still be undesirable if it lacks strong detail or original luster, and this nuance has made the series a favorite among serious numismatists who appreciate subtle distinctions rather than obvious rarity alone. And as silver Washington quarters flowed through the economy during World War II, they became silent witnesses to a nation mobilized for global conflict, carried by workers in factories, families managing ration books, and soldiers traveling across the country, and despite the enormous demand for metal during the war, the composition of the quarter remained unchanged, preserving its 90% silver content and reinforcing public trust in the currency at a time when stability mattered deeply, and after the war. As America entered a period of rapid growth and consumer expansion, the Washington quarter became even more ubiquitous, produced in massive quantities to support vending machines, parking meters, and an increasingly mobile society, and ironically, this flood of coins into circulation reduced the survival rate of pristine examples, because few people bothered to save them, assuming they would always be common and easily replaced, a mindset that collectors today recognize as one of the great misconceptions of numismatic history. And as the 1950s progressed, minting technology improved slightly, but quality control remained inconsistent, leading to coins with bag marks, contact abrasions, and muted luster straight from the mint, factors that permanently limited the population of top-grade pieces, and all of this production took place under the authority of the United States Mint, whose primary goal was efficiency and volume rather than collector perfection, reminding us that many of the most valuable Washington quarters today are valuable precisely because they survived circumstances never designed to preserve them, and throughout this entire period, the calm, resolute image of George Washington remained unchanged on the obverse, providing a sense of continuity and national identity during decades of profound transformation. And this consistency is one reason the Washington Quarter series is so educational, because it allows collectors to isolate variables like strike, condition, and minting era without the distraction of constant design changes. And by studying these early decades carefully, collectors gain insight into how rarity is created not just by low production numbers, but by history itself, by how coins were used, abused, and overlooked. And it is in this overlooked past that the true character of the Washington Quarter begins to emerge, setting the stage for the dramatic changes that would soon follow as silver prices rose, economic pressures mounted, and American coinage entered a new era that would forever change how the quarter was made, collected, and valued. As the story of the Washington quarter dollar moves into its middle era, the coin begins to reflect powerful economic forces and policy decisions that reshaped American coinage forever, because by the late 1950s and early 1960s, rising silver prices, growing inflation, and increasing public demand for coinage created mounting pressure on the nation's monetary system, and the quarter, once valued not only for its purchasing power but also for its precious metal content, became a focal point of concern as people began hoarding silver coins, removing them from circulation faster than the United States Mint could replace them, and this hoarding was driven by the simple reality that the intrinsic silver value of the coin was approaching and in some cases exceeding its face value, making it rational for individuals to save or melt them rather than spend them. And this behavior led to severe coin shortages across the country, affecting everyday commerce, vending machines, parking meters, and businesses that relied on small change. And for collectors, this period represents a fascinating overlap between circulation use and speculative saving, because many people unknowingly preserved Washington quarters simply by setting them aside as silver, inadvertently creating future collectible survivors. And as the crisis intensified, the U.S. government faced a difficult decision: either continue striking silver coins at increasing cost or fundamentally change the composition of circulating coinage. And in 1965, that decision was made with the passage of the Coinage Act, which removed silver from the quarter entirely and replaced it with a copper-nickel clad composition, instantly dividing the Washington Quarter series into two distinct eras, silver and clad, And while this change was driven by economic necessity, it had enormous implications for collectors, because it established 1964 and earlier quarters as a finite group, no longer reproducible, giving them an enduring appeal rooted in both history and precious metal content. And during the transitional years immediately following the change, confusion and speculation were widespread, with many Americans believing that silver would soon return to circulating coinage, leading them to hoard not only pre-1965 quarters but also early clad issues in hopes they might become valuable. And this behavior explains why certain dates from the late 1960s exist in surprisingly high numbers in uncirculated condition today, as rolls and bags were saved en masse, and yet despite this saving, quality remained inconsistent, as many clad Washington quarters suffered from weak strikes, dull luster, and poor planchet preparation, making true gem examples elusive and valuable. And at the same time, minting technology was evolving, with higher speed presses and new production methods that increased output but sometimes sacrificed detail, especially on the high points of George Washington's portrait and the eagle's feathers. And this era also saw the end of mint marks on coins from 1965 through 1967, a decision intended to discourage hoarding by making coins appear more uniform, a move that today adds another layer of complexity for collectors studying attribution and provenance. And as the nation adjusted to clad coinage, the Washington quarter continued its role as a workhorse of commerce, circulating more heavily than ever as the economy expanded, while quietly becoming a bridge between old and new monetary systems. And for collectors who understand this period, these years offer crucial lessons about how external forces like metal markets, legislation, and public behavior directly influence rarity, survival rates, and long-term value, demonstrating that the Washington quarter is not merely a static design repeated year after year, but a responsive artifact shaped by the economic realities of its time, preserving within it the story of a nation adapting to change while striving to maintain stability and trust in its money. As the Washington quarter dollar settled fully into the clad era, the coin entered a phase where sheer volume of production masked a new kind of rarity that many collectors initially overlooked, because while millions and even hundreds of millions of quarters were struck each year from the late 1960s through the 1980s and beyond, truly high-quality examples became increasingly difficult to find due to changes in minting priorities, handling practices, and public perception of modern coinage. And this is the period where the concept of condition rarity became absolutely central to understanding value, since a coin's worth was no longer defined by silver content or low mintage alone, but by how well it survived mass production and rough circulation. And during these decades, the United States Mint focused almost entirely on efficiency, striking coins at unprecedented speed to meet the needs of a growing economy, which often resulted in weak strikes, flat details, and a noticeable lack of sharpness on the high points of George Washington's hair and the eagle's breast feathers. And while these flaws were accepted as normal at the time, they later became critical factors in grading, with sharply struck coins commanding significant premiums in today's market. And another defining feature of this era was the increasing frequency of mint errors and varieties, as higher production volumes and faster press speeds naturally led to mistakes such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, die cracks, and double dies, many of which went unnoticed in circulation and are only now being recognized and attributed by specialists. And these errors add a layer of excitement to modern Washington quarter collecting, proving that even common-date coins can be valuable if they exhibit dramatic or visually appealing anomalies. And at the same time, the growing popularity of third-party grading services transformed how collectors evaluated and traded quarters. Because professional certification introduced standardized grading, population reports, and competitive registry sets, pushing demand for the finest known examples of each date and mint. And this shift revealed that for many clad issues, especially from the 1970s and early 1980s, the number of coins surviving in top grades is astonishingly low compared to their original mintages, making them sleeper rarities that can sell for surprisingly strong prices. And beyond technical considerations, this period also reflects changing public attitudes toward coinage, as fewer people paid attention to the artistry or craftsmanship of everyday coins, viewing them as disposable rather than collectible, which further reduced the likelihood that pristine examples would be saved. And this indifference ironically created opportunities for patient collectors who recognized quality when others did not, setting aside sharply struck, lustrous quarters that now stand out in a sea of mediocre survivors. And as the decades progressed, the Washington quarter continued to serve as a canvas for experimentation and innovation, laying the groundwork for future circulating commemorative programs that would redefine the role of the quarter in American culture. And by understanding this clad era evolution, collectors gain a deeper appreciation for how rarity can exist even in the most common coins, hidden not in mintage figures but in the subtle interplay of strike, preservation, and historical context. reinforcing the idea that the Washington quarter dollar remains a rich and rewarding field of study for those willing to look beyond face value and surface appearances. As we move into the final chapters of the Washington quarter dollar story, the coin's significance expands beyond simple numismatic interest into cultural impact, historical storytelling, and long-term collectability, because by the 1990s, the quarter had already established itself as one of the most recognized and widely circulated coins in America. And yet it still had untapped potential as a vehicle for public engagement, education, and artistic expression, which the United States Mint realized with the launch of the 50-state quarters program in 1999, an unprecedented initiative designed to honor each state with a unique reverse design while maintaining the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse. And this program completely transformed the way Americans interacted with coins, sparking widespread interest in collecting as families, schools, and casual enthusiasts began searching through circulation for each new design, filling albums, and learning state history, geography, and symbols in a hands-on way, and the popularity of the program was phenomenal, producing hundreds of millions of quarters annually, yet creating condition rarity and demand for the highest quality examples, as collectors learned that not all coins were created equal and that careful selection could yield gems worthy of serious investment, and beyond state quarters. The Washington quarter became the foundation for later programs like America the Beautiful Quarters, which celebrated national parks, historic sites, and landmarks, further cementing the quarter's role as a storytelling medium and expanding the coin's educational value, because each reverse design taught viewers about American heritage while reinforcing the historical continuity provided by Washington's portrait, and through these programs, the quarter proved that even a small coin can serve as a canvas for art, history, and national pride, bridging the gap between everyday circulation and high-level numismatics, and for collectors, this modern era introduced new complexities, as the sheer volume of coins meant that quality again became the differentiator, with sharp strikes, original luster, and flawless surfaces commanding premiums even among common dates, while subtle varieties, errors, and regional striking differences provided additional opportunities for discovery and value, and in this way, the Washington quarter exemplifies the dynamic interplay between mass production, collector demand, and historical significance, because every coin carries the imprint of the minting process, economic forces, and public behavior, making it more than just currency but a tangible artifact of American life. And as technology, design philosophy, and public interest evolve, the Washington quarter continues to be both a collectible object and a cultural touchstone, linking classic silver issues, mid-century clad coins, and modern commemoratives into a coherent narrative that spans nearly a century, offering lessons in history, economics, artistry, and the enduring appeal of tangible money. And for anyone seeking to understand why coin collecting remains a fascinating hobby, the Washington quarter is the perfect example of how a small, everyday object can hold immense educational, financial, and historical value, rewarding patience, knowledge, and careful observation, and reminding us that even in a world moving increasingly toward digital currency, the stories, artistry, and collectible potential of a well-preserved coin remain as relevant and compelling as ever, proving that the Washington quarter dollar is far more than a medium of exchange. It is a living archive of American history, design, and culture, still circulating, still collected, and still capable of inspiring curiosity, appreciation, and discovery among collectors of all ages. As we conclude the comprehensive story of the Washington quarter dollar, it becomes clear that this small coin is much more than its face value, because it embodies nearly a century of American history, artistry, and economic evolution, and its enduring appeal lies in the combination of design consistency, subtle variations, historical context, and the fascinating interplay between circulation and preservation, and collectors who study the series in depth quickly learn that true value is rarely about the coins everyone notices, but about the survivors that endured decades of handling, environmental stress, and shifting public priorities, because from the original 1932 silver issues to the modern commemorative programs, each Washington quarter tells a unique story of its time, reflecting national events, minting practices, and even technological advances. And one of the most critical lessons from this series is the importance of condition, as high-grade examples, whether silver or clad, are scarce precisely because circulation and handling took their toll, and even coins from the late 20th and early 21st centuries demonstrate this, showing that preservation, careful storage, and attention to detail are essential for collectors seeking top-tier pieces. And alongside condition, varieties and errors add another layer of excitement and rarity, because double dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other mint anomalies provide tangible evidence of the production process, mistakes that escaped quality control, and moments when human and mechanical factors intersected to create one-of-a-kind coins. and these coins are often the most visually appealing and historically interesting, attracting collectors who value both aesthetics and story, and as the series progressed into the modern era with the State Quarters and America the Beautiful programs, the Washington Quarter transformed from a simple circulating coin into a canvas for education, public engagement, and national storytelling, with each reverse design offering lessons in geography, history, and symbolism, while the obverse portrait of George Washington maintained continuity, linking centuries of coinage and reminding collectors of the enduring legacy of the nation's first president. And this continuity allows anyone building a collection to see patterns, changes, and innovations over time, whether in strike quality, metal composition, minting technology, or commemorative design. And beyond numismatic significance, the Washington Quarter also serves as a cultural artifact, capturing shifts in public perception of money, how citizens engage with coinage, and the ways in which coins circulate as both practical objects and collectible items. Because while most quarters change hands countless times without notice, the most valuable or rare examples carry history, artistry, and economic context that can only be appreciated by studying the series carefully. And advanced collectors recognize that the Washington Quarter market is dynamic, influenced not just by mintage figures but by population reports, collector interest, market trends, and discoveries of overlooked varieties, creating opportunities to acquire significant coins even decades after they were minted. And as physical currency gradually recedes in the digital age, surviving Washington Quarters, especially well-preserved silver issues and high-grade clad coins, become increasingly meaningful, serving as tangible links to a past where money was both practical and symbolic. And for collectors, historians, and enthusiasts alike, the Washington Quarter embodies the enduring appeal of coins, their ability to preserve stories, reward knowledge and patience, and connect generations through a shared object that transcends its monetary function, while continuing to educate, inspire, and captivate, proving beyond doubt that the Washington Quarter dollar is not merely a tool of commerce, but a profound symbol of American history, continuity, and culture. And thanks for watching.